I raised my crystal glass, brimming with champagne, ready to toast to a new life I'd only dreamed of, but then my phone buzzed. The message blinked on the screen: urgent, don't drink that. My hand froze midair, and in that suspended moment, the joy I felt began to dissolve into a cold pit in my stomach. My name is Eleanor, I'm 75 years old, and today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would share. And if for even a second this feels familiar, I only ask that you like this video and subscribe. It will help me keep opening my heart. Every morning in my cramped apartment in Queens, New York, I wake to the smell of stale coffee mingled with the city's honking horns and the distant rumble of the subway beneath the cracked pavement. My routine is predictably exhausting. I check my phone for messages, for calls, then stare at framed photographs that no longer bring the warmth they once did. My children's faces look back at me, but the smiles seem forced, the eyes cold. The apartment is a one-bedroom on the third floor of a building that's seen better decades. The walls are thin enough that I hear Mrs. Rodriguez arguing with her husband about money every night. The radiator clanks like an old ghost, and the linoleum in my kitchen has worn patterns from where I've walked the same path for 23 years. 23 years of the same routine, the same disappointments, the same hollow feeling that I'm invisible to the people I love most. I keep 3 photographs on my nightstand. One shows my daughter Rebecca at her college graduation, her arm around me, both of us smiling. But I remember that day differently now. She pulled away from my embrace after the photo, embarrassed by my second-hand dress. The second photo shows my son Michael holding his newborn daughter, Maya. I'm in the background, blurry, like I always am in their lives. The third is of all of us at Christmas 5 years ago. We're gathered around a tree I bought with my Social Security check, holding gifts I couldn't afford. Nobody in that photo is looking at me. That Tuesday morning started like any other. I shuffled to the kitchen in my worn slippers, the ones with holes I've been meaning to replace for 3 years but never do because Michael always seems to need help with his rent, or Rebecca calls crying about her credit card debt. I made my instant coffee in the chipped mug that says, "World's Best Mom," a Mother's Day gift from 10 years ago that feels more like mockery now. I reached for my lottery ticket, the one I buy every week with the same numbers. My birthday, my children's birthdays, my late husband's birthday. 47, 52, 12, 8, 19, 31. I've played these numbers for 15 years, ever since Harold passed. He used to laugh at me for buying tickets. "Eleanor," he'd say in his gentle voice, "lightning doesn't strike twice in the same place." But Harold never understood that sometimes lightning is the only hope you have left. I checked the numbers on my phone, squinting at the small screen. 47. Yes. 52. Yes. 12, 8, 19. My heart started beating faster. 31. All 6 numbers matched. I blinked, convinced I was seeing things. I checked again. And again. $45 million. I won $45 million. My hands trembled as I reached for the champagne bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to come. It was cheap champagne, the kind you buy at the corner store for $12, but in that moment it felt like liquid gold. I poured it into my only good glass, a crystal wine glass Harold gave me for our 20th anniversary. I raised the glass high, feeling tears stream down my weathered cheeks. "Harold," I whispered to the empty apartment, "we did it. We finally did it." The champagne caught the morning light streaming through my dusty window, casting tiny rainbows on the wall. And that's when my phone buzzed. The text was from Rebecca. Just 4 words: urgent, don't drink that. My hand froze. The champagne glass suddenly felt heavy, like it was filled with lead instead of celebration. How could she know? How could she possibly know what I was doing in my own apartment? Then it hit me like a punch to the stomach. The security camera. The one Michael convinced me to install, for my safety, after Mrs. Rodriguez was robbed last year. The one that faces directly into my kitchen. The one they said was just to keep me safe, but now I realized was always watching. Always recording. Always reporting back to them. You see, I need to tell you about the years that led to this moment. The years of sacrifice that nobody talks about at family dinners. The years of being taken for granted until you start to wonder if you're worth anything at all. It started when Harold died. I was 60 and lost, drowning in grief and medical bills. The funeral cost more than we had saved, and I was left with his debts and a pension that barely covered my rent. That's when my children stepped in, not with comfort, but with solutions that somehow always benefited them more than me. "Mom, you should sell the house," Rebecca said during the week after Harold's funeral. I was still wearing black, still crying into my coffee every morning. "It's too big for you anyway. You can move into a smaller place and give us the money from the sale. Think of it as an early inheritance." An early inheritance. As if I was already dead to them. "Mom needs to be practical," Michael agreed. He was wearing his expensive suit, the one I helped him buy for job interviews. "We're just looking out for you." So I sold the house Harold and I bought when we were newlyweds. The house where I raised my children, where I nursed Harold through his illness, where every room held 40 years of memories. I sold it and moved into this apartment in Queens, giving most of the money to Rebecca for her down payment on a house in Westchester and to Michael for his business investment that never seemed to materialize into anything more than expensive dinners and new cars. "You're so generous, Grandma Eleanor," little Maya would say when she visited. Even at 5 years old, she could see what her parents couldn't, or chose not to see. That I was disappearing a little more each day. The requests never stopped. They came disguised as emergencies, as opportunities, as favors that any loving mother would gladly fulfill. "Mom, Rebecca's car broke down. She needs $3,000 for repairs." "Mom, can you help with Maya's private school tuition? It's only $15,000 a semester." "Mom, my business is expanding. I need a loan of $10,000. I'll pay you back with interest." The interest never came. The payback never happened. But the requests kept coming, each one accompanied by guilt disguised as love. "We wouldn't ask if we weren't desperate," Rebecca would say, her voice sweet with manipulation. "You know we love you. Family takes care of family." But family, I was learning, was a one-way street in our house. When I needed help, when my arthritis flared up and I couldn't carry groceries, when I fell in my bathroom and lay on the floor for 2 hours before I could get up, when I spent 3 days with pneumonia and no one called to check on me, family was suddenly busy with their own lives. I remember the night I ended up in the emergency room with chest pains. It was a false alarm, just stress and heartburn, but I was scared and alone at 2 in the morning. I called Michael first. It went to voicemail. I called Rebecca. Her husband answered, annoyed. "Eleanor? It's 2 a.m. Rebecca's sleeping. Can this wait until morning?" I spent that night in the hospital alone, surrounded by strangers who showed me more kindness than my own children had in months. The next day, when I called to tell them what happened, Rebecca's response was not concern or apology. It was irritation. "Mom, you should have called an Uber instead of an ambulance. Do you know how much that's going to cost? And why didn't you call me at a reasonable hour?" That's when I started to understand the difference between being loved and being useful. The years blurred together in a cycle of requests and rejections, of giving and receiving nothing in return. I watched my savings account shrink like my hopes, watched my children's lives improve while mine contracted to the size of this small apartment and an even smaller role in their busy lives. My birthdays became afterthoughts. "Oh Mom, I'm so sorry I missed your birthday. I was so busy with work." My holidays became obligations they fulfilled with minimal effort. "We can't come for Thanksgiving this year, but we'll try for Christmas." Christmas would come and go with a phone call and promises to visit soon that never materialized. I started measuring my worth by their needs. If Rebecca called, I had purpose. If Michael texted, I mattered. But the silence between their requests grew longer and colder, and I found myself disappearing into the white noise of city life, just another invisible elderly woman in a building full of people who never really saw me. The loneliness was crushing. Some days I would sit by my window for hours, watching people hurry past on the sidewalk below, all of them going somewhere, belonging to someone. I would make myself tea and pretend Harold was still here to share it with. I would call my children and hang up before they answered, afraid of hearing the impatience in their voices. The worst part wasn't the money they took. It wasn't even the birthdays they forgot or the holidays they skipped. The worst part was feeling like I had to earn my place in their lives every single day, and still never being quite enough. Last winter, when the flu left me bedridden for a week, I called Michael to ask if he could bring me some groceries. My voice was raspy, my fever high enough that everything felt like a dream. "I'm really busy, Mom. Can't you order delivery or something?" "I don't know how to order delivery on the computer, and I don't have the strength to." "Mom, you need to learn these things. You can't expect us to drop everything every time you need something. Maybe it's time to look into assisted living." Assisted living. He wanted to warehouse me because bringing his mother groceries when she had the flu was too much of an inconvenience. I hung up the phone and cried until I had no tears left. Then I forced myself out of bed, bundled up in every warm thing I owned, and shuffled to the corner store for soup and aspirin. The store owner, Mr. Kim, took one look at me and insisted on walking me home. He was kinder to me in 10 minutes than my children had been in years. That night, as I lay shivering under 3 blankets, sipping lukewarm soup from a can, I made myself a promise. I was going to stop disappearing. I was going to stop making myself smaller to make room for their indifference. I was going to find my worth again, even if I had to rebuild it from nothing. But promises made in the dark of winter seem foolish in the harsh light of spring, and when Rebecca called in March with tears in her voice, talking about how she might lose her house if she couldn't make the mortgage payment, I found myself at the bank again, transferring money I couldn't afford to give away. "You're saving my life, Mom. I don't know what I'd do without you." But I did know what she'd do without me. She'd find someone else to solve her problems while I disappeared completely. The lottery ticket was my secret rebellion. Every Tuesday and Friday, I would buy one ticket with my numbers, Harold's numbers, our children's numbers. It was foolish, I knew that. The odds were impossible. But it was my tiny act of defiance against a life that had shrunk to the size of other people's problems. And then, on that Tuesday morning in June, the impossible happened. $45 million. I stared at the numbers on my phone screen until they blurred with tears. $45 million. More money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. More money than my children had taken from me over the years. More money than Harold and I ever dreamed of having. I thought about what this meant. I could buy a beautiful house, something with a garden where I could grow tomatoes like my mother used to. I could travel to Ireland, where Harold's family came from. I could donate to the animal shelter where I used to volunteer before arthritis made it too painful to walk dogs. I could help other elderly people who were struggling like I had been. Most of all, I wouldn't have to beg for scraps of my children's attention anymore. I wouldn't have to choose between groceries and helping with their latest crisis. I wouldn't have to measure my worth by how useful I could be to people who saw me as an ATM with unconditional love. I was free. Or so I thought. The champagne was my celebration of that freedom. I wanted to toast to Harold, to the future, to the possibility that the last decades of my life might be the best ones yet. I wanted to drink to independence and dignity and the radical idea that my happiness mattered too. But as I lifted that glass, as the bubbles caught the morning light streaming through my kitchen window, my phone buzzed with a message that turned my celebration into something much darker. Urgent, don't drink that. How did Rebecca know? How could she possibly know what I was doing in the privacy of my own apartment? The answer made me sick. The security camera. The one Michael had insisted on installing, supposedly for my safety. The one that had a perfect view of my kitchen counter, where I did everything from eating meals to opening mail to checking lottery tickets. They had been watching me. All this time, they had been watching me. My hand shook as I set down the champagne glass. The celebration was over before it began. In its place was a cold understanding that even my most private moments weren't my own. I looked up at the small black camera mounted in the corner of my kitchen ceiling. Its red light blinked steadily, recording everything. Recording me checking the lottery numbers. Recording me pouring champagne. Recording me crying tears of joy that I thought were mine alone. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a call from Michael. Mom, don't do anything stupid. We saw that you won the lottery. We're coming over right now. We saw. Not, we heard. Not, congratulations. We saw. They had been watching me, and now they were coming to take control of my miracle just like they had taken control of everything else. I sat down heavily in my kitchen chair, the weight of realization crushing the joy right out of me. Even this, even $45 million, even the first good thing to happen to me in years, wasn't going to be mine. Within 20 minutes, I heard the familiar sound of Rebecca's heels clicking up the stairs, followed by Michael's heavy footsteps. They had keys to my apartment, of course. Keys they had insisted on having, in case of emergency. Everything in my life was treated like an emergency that required their management. Rebecca burst through my door without knocking, her face flushed with excitement and something else, something predatory that I had never noticed before, or maybe had chosen not to see. Mom. Oh my God, Mom. $45 million. Can you believe it? She grabbed me in a hug that felt different from any embrace we had ever shared. It wasn't the hug of a daughter celebrating her mother's good fortune. It was the hug of someone who had just discovered treasure. Michael followed behind her, already talking on his phone. Yes, I need to speak to a financial advisor immediately. My mother just won $45 million and she's not capable of managing that kind of money herself. Not capable. Those words hit me like physical blows. I'm standing right here, Michael, I said quietly. He covered the phone with his hand. Mom, this is serious. You can't just sit on this kind of money. It needs to be managed properly. It needs to be invested. You could lose it all if you don't know what you're doing. Rebecca nodded enthusiastically. Mom, we've been so worried about your finances for years. Remember when you forgot to pay that electric bill? And last month when you overdrew your checking account buying groceries? You're not good with money, and that's okay. That's what family is for. I had forgotten to pay the electric bill once because I had used that money to help Rebecca with her car payment. I had overdrawn my checking account because Michael needed help with Maya's school fees. But somehow, in their retelling, my financial struggles were character flaws rather than the direct result of their constant requests for help. I'm perfectly capable of managing my own money, I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. Mom, be realistic, Michael said, still holding his phone. You're 75 years old. You live in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens. You buy your groceries at the corner store and you still use cash for everything. Do you even know what Bitcoin is? Do you understand stock markets or cryptocurrency investments? This money could grow into even more money if it's handled right. Bitcoin. Cryptocurrency. Stock market. These words that I had heard on the news but never thought applied to my life were suddenly being thrown at me like weapons. I don't need the money to grow, I said. I just want to enjoy it. Rebecca laughed, but it wasn't a kind laugh. Mom, that's exactly the problem. You want to enjoy it instead of thinking strategically. People who win the lottery go broke all the time because they don't understand how to handle sudden wealth. Look at those statistics, most lottery winners lose everything within a few years. We're not going to let that happen to you, Michael said, finally hanging up his phone. I've set up a meeting with a wealth management firm for tomorrow morning. They specialize in helping families protect large inheritances and lottery winnings. It's not an inheritance, I said. It's my money. The silence that followed was deafening. Rebecca and Michael exchanged a look, one of those wordless communications that parents use over their children's heads. Except I was the parent, and I was being treated like the child. Of course it's your money, Mom, Rebecca said with exaggerated patience. But you have to think about the family. You have to think about Maya's future, about her college fund. You have to think about the family business that could finally expand with proper investment capital. Michael nodded. Mom, this money isn't just about you. It's about all of us. It's about security for everyone. Think about what Dad would have wanted. Harold. They were using Harold against me, my dead husband who couldn't defend himself or me. Your father would have wanted me to be happy, I said firmly. Of course he would, Rebecca agreed quickly. And you will be happy. We all will be. But first, we need to make sure this money is protected. We need to make sure it's working for the whole family. The whole family. But when had I become just a piece of the family instead of its heart? When had my joy become secondary to their security? I want to buy a house, I said. A house with a garden. That's a wonderful idea. Rebecca said brightly. We can look at houses in Westchester, near me. There are some lovely communities there, very safe, very quiet. Perfect for someone your age. Near her. Not where I wanted to be, but where she could keep an eye on me. Where she could make sure I didn't make any decisions she hadn't approved first. I don't want to live in Westchester, I said. I want to live somewhere warm. Maybe Florida. Maybe California. Somewhere I can grow vegetables and sit outside without putting on 3 sweaters. Michael frowned. Mom, that's not practical. You don't know anyone in Florida or California. Your doctors are here. Your life is here. Besides, buying property in those states is a huge investment. You need to be smart about this. Smart. Practical. Capable. Every word they used to describe what I wasn't felt like another brick in a wall they were building around me. What if I just want to be happy instead of smart? I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke from a fire nobody wanted to acknowledge. Rebecca sat down across from me and took my hands in hers. Her touch was gentle, but her eyes were hard with determination. Mom, listen to me. I love you. We both love you so much. But you're not thinking clearly right now. This is overwhelming. $45 million is overwhelming for anyone, but especially for someone who's never dealt with this kind of wealth. You need us. You need our help. And we're here to help you, but only if you let us. The words sounded loving, but underneath them was a threat. Help me or lose me. Accept their management or face their abandonment. I looked at my children, my successful, confident, beautiful children who I had raised and sacrificed for and loved with every breath in my body, and realized that I didn't know who they were anymore. Or maybe I had never known who they were. Maybe I had only known who I needed them to be. I need time to think, I said finally. Time to think is exactly what you don't have, Michael said urgently. Mom, the longer you wait, the more complicated this becomes. There are taxes to consider, legal implications. Every day you delay is money potentially lost. Money potentially lost. Everything came back to money with them. Not my happiness, not my dreams, not my right to make my own choices. Just money and how to control it. I'm not signing anything today, I said, and I was surprised by how firm my voice sounded. Rebecca's patience finally cracked. Mom, you're being ridiculous. This is the best thing that's ever happened to our family, and you're acting like we're trying to steal from you. We're trying to help you. By taking control of my money? By making sure you don't waste it. Michael snapped. Mom, with all due respect, your track record with money isn't great. You've been living paycheck to paycheck for 15 years. You can't even balance your checkbook properly. This money needs professional management, and that means trusting people who know what they're doing. People who know what they're doing. Not me, apparently. Never me. I stood up from my kitchen table, my arthritis making the movement slow and painful. Rebecca and Michael watched me like I was a wild animal that might bolt. I want you both to leave now, I said quietly. Mom, Rebecca started. Please leave. I need to think. We're not leaving you alone to make bad decisions, Michael said. This is too important. It's my life, I said. It's my money. It's my decision. And we're your children. Rebecca said, her voice rising. We have a right to be involved in this. We have a right to make sure you're protected. Protected from whom? From what? The only people I seemed to need protection from were standing in my kitchen, demanding control over a miracle that was supposed to be mine. Get out, I said, louder this time. They left, finally, but not before Michael placed a business card on my counter. The appointment is at 10 a.m. tomorrow. The address is on the card. Don't make us worry about you, Mom. Don't make us worry. As if my independence was an act of cruelty against them. After they left, I sat in my empty apartment and stared at the champagne glass, now warm and flat. The celebration I had dreamed of was ruined before it began. The freedom I thought I had won was already being negotiated away by people who claimed to love me but treated me like an incompetent child. I picked up the lottery ticket and looked at it again. $45 million. Life-changing money. Life-saving money. Money that could buy me independence and dignity and the chance to matter in my own life again. But somehow, it was already being taken away from me. The camera in the corner blinked its red light, still watching, still recording. I walked over and unplugged it from the wall. The light went dark for the first time in months. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Rebecca's words, people who win the lottery go broke all the time. Was she right? Was I too old, too naive, too financially irresponsible to handle this money? I thought about all the times over the years when I had made financial mistakes. The electric bill I forgot to pay. The checking account overdraft. The credit card debt I accumulated helping them with their emergencies. Every mistake came flooding back, each one a piece of evidence that I wasn't capable of managing wealth. But then I remembered something else. I remembered how Harold and I had managed our modest finances for 40 years of marriage. We had never been rich, but we had never been irresponsible either. We had saved for our children's education, paid our mortgage on time, built a small retirement nest egg that we had been proud of. The mistakes Rebecca and Michael kept mentioning had all happened after Harold died, and they had all happened because I was giving money I didn't have to children who didn't seem to care whether I could afford their requests or not. Maybe I wasn't bad with money. Maybe I was bad at saying no to people I loved. The next morning came too quickly. I dressed carefully in my best outfit, a navy blue dress I had worn to Harold's funeral and hadn't put on since. It felt like armor. At 9:30, Rebecca called. Mom, we'll pick you up in 15 minutes. I hope you're ready. I'm not going to the meeting, I said. Silence. Then, what do you mean you're not going? I mean I've decided not to go to the meeting you scheduled without asking me. Mom, we talked about this. You need professional help managing this money. Maybe I do. But I need to choose who that help comes from. I need to choose advisors who work for me, not for you. That's the same thing. Rebecca said, but there was panic in her voice. No, it's not. It's really not. I hung up before she could respond. At 10:15, my buzzer rang insistently. When I ignored it, my phone started ringing. First Rebecca, then Michael, then both of them again and again. I turned off my phone and unplugged my landline. For the first time in years, my apartment was quiet except for the sounds of the city below. I made myself coffee and sat by the window, watching people hurry past on their way to wherever they needed to be. For the first time in my life, I didn't need to be anywhere but exactly where I was. But the peace didn't last long. That afternoon, Maya knocked on my door. Not Rebecca or Michael, but my 8-year-old granddaughter, looking confused and a little scared. Grandma Eleanor? Mommy and Uncle Michael are really upset. They said you're sick and making bad choices. Are you sick? I knelt down to Maya's level, ignoring the pain in my knees. Her innocent face was creased with worry, and I realized that she had been sent as a weapon, the one person I couldn't turn away, the one person whose concern would break my heart. I'm not sick, sweetheart. I'm actually feeling better than I have in a long time. But Mommy said you won lots of money and now you're acting crazy. She said you might lose all of it because you don't know how to take care of it. Out of the mouths of babes come the words adults put there. Maya, do you think your grandma Eleanor is crazy? She considered this seriously, tilting her head the way children do when they're really thinking. You make the best cookies. And you always remember my favorite books. And you taught me how to braid friendship bracelets even though your hands hurt sometimes. Crazy people can't do those things, can they? No, sweetheart. They can't. Then I think Mommy is wrong. Children see clearly what adults choose to ignore. Maya saw me as a person capable of love and creativity and patience. Her parents saw me as a problem to be managed. Grammy, are you really rich now? Yes, I am. Are you going to buy a big house? Maybe. Would you like that? She nodded enthusiastically. Can it have a pool? And a swing set? And maybe a tree house? It can have anything you want, as long as you promise to visit me. I'll visit you every day if Mommy lets me. If mommy lets me. Even at 8 years old, Maya understood that access to me was controlled by people who had their own agenda. After Maya left, I sat in my apartment and thought about leverage. That's what this was really about, not my financial competence or my mental health, but leverage. As long as I was dependent on my children for emotional scraps and guilty handouts, they had all the power in our relationship. But $45 million changed the balance of power completely. Suddenly, I didn't need their help. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need to earn my place in their lives by being useful. And that terrified them. Late that evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my old friend Clara, Harold's sister, who had moved to Florida after her husband died. We had lost touch after Harold's funeral, not because of any fight or disagreement, but because grief makes people retreat into themselves, and I had been retreating for 5 years. Eleanor? Oh my God, Eleanor. I can't believe you're calling. How are you, honey? Clara's voice was like warm sunshine, full of the affection I had forgotten existed in the world. Clara, I have something to tell you, and you're going to think I'm making it up. Try me. I won the lottery. $45 million. Silence. Then, holy shit. Eleanor, are you serious? I started laughing, really laughing, for the first time since I'd checked those numbers. Clara's reaction was pure joy, no calculations, no immediate questions about management or investments or what I was going to do with the money. Just happiness for me. I'm serious. And Clara, I want to ask you something. Remember how we used to talk about getting old together? About finding a place where we could have gardens and sit in the sun and watch our grandchildren play. Of course I remember. I want to do that. I want to buy a beautiful house somewhere warm, and I want you to live there with me. Not as my guest, but as my partner in this adventure. Will you consider it? Clara was quiet for a long moment. Eleanor, are your kids okay with this? And there it was. Even Clara, who hadn't spoken to Rebecca and Michael in years, assumed that my decisions needed their approval. Clara, my kids don't get to be okay or not okay with my choices anymore. I'm 75 years old. If I don't start living for myself now, when will I? You're absolutely right, she said firmly. Yes. Yes, I would love to grow old with you somewhere beautiful. When do we start looking at houses? That night, I slept better than I had in months. But the next morning brought a new level of warfare. My bank called to inform me that there had been some concerns raised about my mental competency, and that my accounts were being temporarily frozen pending a psychological evaluation. Concerns raised by whom? By my loving children, who had decided that if they couldn't control my money through manipulation, they would control it through legal channels. I hung up the phone and felt something snap inside me. Not break, snap. Like a rubber band that had been stretched too far for too long finally reaching its limit. I called a taxi and went directly to the bank. The manager, a nervous young man who clearly had no experience dealing with elderly women who had been pushed too far, explained that Rebecca and Michael had filed papers claiming I was showing signs of dementia and was therefore unable to make financial decisions. Mrs. Patterson, they're very concerned about your well-being. They say you've been acting irrationally since winning the lottery, making unrealistic plans, and refusing to accept help managing your windfall. What plans have I made that are unrealistic? Well, according to your daughter, you want to move to a different state, purchase property without proper financial consultation, and make large gifts to people outside your immediate family. Those people outside my immediate family include your daughter's aunt, my sister-in-law, who has been my friend for 45 years. And yes, I want to move somewhere warm and buy a house where I can be happy. These are not the plans of a demented person. These are the plans of a free person. The bank manager shuffled papers uncomfortably. Mrs. Patterson, I have to follow protocol here. Until you have a psychological evaluation stating that you're mentally competent, I can't release any of your funds. How long will that take? Well, there's a waiting list for the court-approved psychologists. Probably 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks during which my children would have time to build their case, find lawyers, and construct a legal framework to control my money permanently. I left the bank feeling angrier than I had ever felt in my entire life. But underneath the anger was something else, a cold, clear understanding that this was war, and I had better learn how to fight. I spent the next 3 days doing research. I learned about elder financial abuse, about adult children who use conservatorship laws to control their parents' assets, about the legal system that often assumes elderly people are incompetent until proven otherwise. I also learned about patient advocates, elder rights attorneys, and independent psychological evaluators who couldn't be influenced by family members with their own agendas. On Thursday morning, I called the office of Margaret Chen, an attorney who specialized in elder rights and financial abuse cases. Mrs. Patterson, what you're describing is unfortunately very common. Adult children often convince themselves that they're protecting their parents when they're actually protecting their own financial interests. The good news is that you called me before they could get any legal guardianship established. We can fight this. Margaret Chen became my first ally in a war I never wanted to fight. She was sharp, experienced, and completely unimpressed by my children's claims about my mental competency. Mrs. Patterson, you just spent 3 days researching complex legal concepts and calling appropriate professionals for help. That's not the behavior of someone with dementia. That's the behavior of someone who's finally standing up for herself. Over the next 2 weeks, while my children escalated their legal campaign against me, I built my own case. I underwent a comprehensive psychological evaluation that found me perfectly competent. I hired my own financial advisors, people who worked for me, not my family. I documented years of financial requests from Rebecca and Michael, showing a clear pattern of exploitation. Most importantly, I started building a life that didn't revolve around earning their approval. I found a beautiful house in Sarasota, Florida, a 2-story colonial with a wraparound porch and a garden that needed work but had good bones. I put in an offer sight unseen, trusting Clara's inspection and my own instinct that anywhere would be better than the small apartment where I had been disappearing for 5 years. The house cost $3 million, pocket change from my lottery winnings, but more money than I had ever dreamed of spending on myself. The realtor, a kind woman named Janet who specialized in helping seniors relocate, walked me through the process over the phone and by email, treating me like the intelligent adult I was instead of the incompetent elderly person my children pretended I had become. Mrs. Patterson, this house has everything you mentioned wanting. A big kitchen for cooking, a library for reading, guest rooms for visitors, and a garden where you can grow anything you want. But most of all, it has privacy. High walls, a gate, and neighbors who mind their own business. After what you've told me about your situation, I think privacy might be exactly what you need right now. Privacy. The concept was almost foreign to me after years of being monitored and managed. While the house purchase moved through escrow, I received a steady stream of increasingly desperate communications from Rebecca and Michael. They had discovered my plans through I don't know what means, probably banking records they were still trying to access, and their tactics shifted from legal maneuvering to pure emotional manipulation. Rebecca sent me a long email with the subject line, "Please don't abandon your family." In it, she detailed all the ways my decision to move away was hurting Maya, how confused and scared my granddaughter was about losing me, how the whole family was falling apart because of my selfish choices. Michael left voicemails that started with concern and escalated to anger. "Mom, you're making a huge mistake. You're buying a house you've never seen in a state where you don't know anyone. This is exactly the kind of impulsive decision-making that proves you need help. And what about Maya? What about your granddaughter who loves you? You're abandoning her for some fantasy about living in Florida." But the message that broke my heart came from Maya herself, or rather, from Maya's phone, with words that sounded too adult for an 8-year-old. "Grandma Eleanor, Mommy says you don't want to be my grandma anymore because you're moving away and you don't care about our family. Is that true? I love you so much and I don't want you to go away. Please don't leave me." I called Maya directly, something I had never done before. Children don't have their own phones, but I called the house and asked to speak to her specifically. "Maya, sweetheart, I need you to listen to me very carefully. I will always be your grandma. I will always love you. Moving to Florida doesn't change that. But Mommy says, Maya, your mommy is scared, and sometimes when grown-ups are scared, they say things that aren't true. I'm not leaving because I don't love you. I'm leaving because I need to be somewhere that makes me happy and healthy. And when you come to visit me, we can swim in my pool and pick oranges right off the tree in my backyard." "Really? You're going to have orange trees?" "Really. And a pool. And a big porch where we can sit and read books together." "That sounds nice, Grandma. It will be nice. And Maya? Your mommy and Uncle Michael are always welcome to visit too, as long as they're kind to me. This isn't about not loving our family. This is about me learning to love myself too." After I hung up, I realized something that should have been obvious but had taken me 75 years to understand: love is not a finite resource. Loving myself didn't mean loving my family less. Taking care of my own needs didn't mean abandoning them. Setting boundaries didn't mean building walls. But it also didn't mean they would understand or accept my choices gracefully. 3 weeks before I was scheduled to move to Florida, Rebecca and Michael showed up at my apartment with a lawyer and a notarized document that they wanted me to sign. They had made an appointment with me like I was a business meeting, arriving precisely at 2 p.m. with briefcases and prepared statements. The document was a family financial management agreement that would put my lottery winnings in a trust managed by both of them, with me receiving a monthly allowance for living expenses. In exchange, they would ensure responsible financial planning for the preservation of family wealth. Family wealth. My individual miracle had become our collective resource, apparently. "Mom, this is the best solution for everyone," Michael said in his most reasonable voice. You get the security of knowing your money is being managed professionally, we get the peace of mind of knowing you're protected, and Maya gets the security of knowing her college fund is safe. This allows you to live comfortably without the stress of managing such a large sum, Rebecca added. You can focus on enjoying your retirement while we handle all the complicated financial stuff. The monthly allowance they proposed was $50,000, more than I had ever made in a year, but a fraction of the interest my lottery money would generate if invested properly. The rest would be controlled by them, theoretically for my benefit, but according to their judgment rather than my wishes. What if I don't sign? I asked. The lawyer, a man who looked uncomfortable with the whole situation, cleared his throat. Mrs. Patterson, your children are prepared to continue with legal proceedings questioning your competency if necessary. This agreement would avoid the need for that unpleasantness. Avoid the unpleasantness. Translation: sign away your autonomy or we'll drag you through the courts and try to prove you're senile. And if I do sign? What happens to the house I'm buying in Florida? Rebecca and Michael exchanged glances. Mom, we've looked at the house you put an offer on. It's way too expensive and way too big for someone your age. But there are some lovely senior communities in Florida that would be much more appropriate. Smaller homes, built-in medical support, social activities with people your own age. Senior communities. Warehouses for elderly people who had become inconvenient for their families. I don't want to live in a senior community. I want to live in my house with my friend Clara. Clara is nice, Mom, but she's not family. What happens if she gets sick? What happens if you have a fight? You'd be stuck in Florida without any real support system. Real support system. Like the support system that had failed me every time I needed it in New York. I looked at the document they wanted me to sign, pages and pages of legal language designed to make me a child again, dependent on their approval for every financial decision I might make. I thought about Harold, about how proud he would have been to see me win the lottery. I thought about the house in Florida with the orange trees and the pool where Maya could visit me. I thought about Clara, waiting for my call to tell her whether our dreams were moving forward or being killed by people who claimed to love me. Most of all, I thought about the woman I had been before years of emotional abuse convinced me I was incompetent and selfish for wanting my own life. I'm not signing, I said quietly. Mom, Rebecca started. I'm not signing, I said louder. I'm 75 years old. I was married for 40 years to a man who trusted me to make decisions. I raised 2 children who turned out successfully, which means I was capable of managing complex situations. I've been living independently since your father died, paying my bills and taking care of myself. The only financial problems I've had were caused by giving you money I couldn't afford to give. I am not incompetent, and I am not signing away my rights to the lottery money I won with numbers that include your birthdays. The lawyer looked relieved, honestly. Mrs. Patterson, that's certainly your right. However, I should warn you that your children are prepared to continue with competency proceedings. Then I guess I'll see them in court. After they left, I sat in my empty apartment, now furnished with boxes and the detritus of a life being packed up, and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Pride. I was proud of myself for saying no. Proud of myself for standing up to people who had bullied me with love for years. Proud of myself for choosing my own happiness over their comfort. The court case never materialized. Margaretson sent one letter to their attorney laying out the evidence of my competency and their pattern of financial exploitation, and suddenly Rebecca and Michael were no longer interested in legal proceedings. Instead, they disappeared. No phone calls. No visites. No responses to my attempts to reach out and explain my decision. I had called their bluff about going to court, and when they realized they couldn't control me through legal means, they decided to punish me through silence. The silence hurt worse than their anger had. At least when they were fighting with me, they were still in my life. Now I had my freedom and my money, but I had lost my children. Or so I thought. Moving day came on a Tuesday in October. Clara flew up from Florida to help me pack the last of my belongings and drive with me to our new life. She arrived at my apartment early in the morning with coffee and donuts from a bakery I had mentioned loving, and the first words out of her mouth were not about the money or the move or the family drama. Eleanor, you look beautiful. You look like yourself again. I hadn't realized I had stopped looking like myself until she said it, but she was right. Looking in the mirror that morning, I saw something I hadn't seen in years, a woman with purpose and possibility instead of just obligations and regrets. The movers came at 8 a.m. Professional, efficient men who treated my few possessions with care and respect. Most of what I owned was going into storage or being donated, a lifetime of accumulation that had once seemed so important and now felt like ballast I was finally ready to shed. As they loaded the last box into their truck, I took one final look around the apartment that had been my prison for 5 years. The walls looked smaller without my furniture, the kitchen looked sadder without my plants. But I didn't feel sad looking at it. I felt free. Clara and I drove south in a rented car, taking our time, stopping wherever we wanted to eat or stretch our legs or just admire the view. We were two old women on an adventure, something I had never been before. I had been a wife, a mother, a caregiver, a financial resource, but I had never been an adventurer. Eleanor, Clara said as we crossed the state line into Georgia, what do you want to do first when we get to the house? I want to sit on the porch and drink wine and watch the sunset, I said immediately. I want to do something absolutely impractical and completely not necessary. That sounds perfect. We arrived at the house just as the sun was starting to set. It was even more beautiful than the pictures had shown, white columns and wraparound porches, live oak trees draped with Spanish moss, a garden that was overgrown but clearly had been carefully designed. It looked like something from a movie about Southern women who drink sweet tea and have complicated family secrets. Clara and I sat on the front porch with glasses of wine, good wine, expensive wine, wine that I bought because I liked it rather than because it was on sale, and watched the sun disappear behind the palm trees. Eleanor, can I ask you something? Of course. Do you miss them? Your kids? I considered the question seriously. I miss who I thought they were. I miss the children I raised, who used to hug me like they meant it and call me just to tell me about their days. I miss feeling like I mattered to them for reasons other than what I could provide. But do I miss the people they became? The people who treated me like an ATM and a burden? No. I don't miss that at all. Do you think they'll come around? Maybe. Maybe not. But Clara, for the first time in 5 years, that's not the most important thing in my life anymore. The most important thing is that I came around. I remembered who I was before I started disappearing. That night, I slept in my own house, not an apartment I was renting, not a place I was tolerating until something better came along, but a house I had chosen and bought with my own money. I slept in a bedroom with windows that faced east, so I would wake up to sunshine instead of the brick wall of the building next door. In the morning, I made coffee in my new kitchen and walked outside to pick grapefruit off the tree in my backyard. I ate fresh grapefruit for breakfast while sitting on my porch, watching birds I didn't recognize drink from the fountain that came with the house. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for anyone to call me. I wasn't worried about anyone's problems but my own. I wasn't measuring my worth by how useful I could be to people who took me for granted. I was just Eleanor, sitting on her own porch, eating fruit from her own tree, planning her own day. 3 months into my new life, Maya called me. Not Rebecca calling and putting Maya on the phone, but Maya herself, who had somehow gotten my new number and called me directly. Grandma Eleanor? I got your number from the phone book on Mommy's computer. Is it really you? It's really me, sweetheart. How are you? I miss you so much. Mommy and Uncle Michael are always sad now, and they keep talking about grown-up things I don't understand. Something about money and lawyers and how you're being mean to the family. Mean to the family. Even after months of silence, I was the villain in their story. Maya, do you think I'm mean? No. You send me postcards with pictures of your house and you call me on my birthday and you never forgot to ask about my loose tooth. Mean people don't remember loose teeth. Children understand love better than adults do. Maya knew I loved her because I paid attention to the small things that mattered to her, not because I wrote checks for things she didn't need. Maya, I need to tell you something important. Your mommy and Uncle Michael are angry at me right now because I made some decisions they didn't like. But that doesn't mean I don't love you. It doesn't mean I don't love them. It just means that sometimes grown-ups disagree about things. Are you going to disagree forever? I don't know, sweetheart. But I know that no matter what happens with the grown-up disagreement, you will always be my granddaughter and I will always love you. Grandma Eleanor? Can I come visit you in Florida sometime? I would love that more than anything in the world. But you'll need your mommy's permission, and right now your mommy is still angry at me. Maybe if I'm really good, she'll let me come. The innocence in her voice broke my heart. She thought love was conditional, that she had to earn her way into relationships through good behavior. She was learning the same lessons I had spent 75 years unlearning. Maya, listen to me. You don't have to be good to deserve love. You don't have to do anything special to make me want to see you. I love you exactly as you are, even when you're not good, even when you make mistakes, even when you're angry or sad or confused. That's what real love is. After we hung up, I cried for the first time since moving to Florida. Not tears of sadness, but tears of grief for all the years I had believed love was something I had to earn rather than something I deserved simply by existing. Spring came early to Florida. By March, my garden was blooming with flowers I had planted and vegetables I had grown myself. I joined a book club at the local library, started taking watercolor classes at the community center, and made friends with my neighbors, people who liked me for my conversation and my lemon bars, not for my ability to solve their financial problems. Clara and I settled into a comfortable routine of independence. We had dinner together most evenings, but we also had our own interests, our own friends, our own spaces. It was the kind of relationship I had never had with my children, based on mutual affection rather than mutual need. One afternoon in April, while I was in my garden planting tomatoes, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Rebecca's number. My first instinct was not to answer. 6 months of silence had given me a peace I wasn't ready to surrender. But something made me pick up, maybe curiosity, maybe hope, maybe just the muscle memory of 40 years of motherhood. "Hello, Rebecca." "Mom." Her voice was different, smaller somehow, less certain. "How are you?" "I'm well. I'm very well. We've been thinking about you. About what happened. And I wanted to call and apologize." The word hung between us like a bridge that might support weight or might crumble under the pressure. "I'm listening," I said carefully. "Mom, we were wrong. Michael and we were wrong about a lot of things. We told ourselves we were protecting you, but really we were protecting ourselves. We were scared of losing you, but instead of trusting you, we tried to control you. And we ended up losing you anyway." It was more self-awareness than Rebecca had shown in years, but I had learned to be cautious about apologies that came too easily. "What changed your mind?" I asked. Rebecca was quiet for a long moment. Maya changed my mind. She's been asking about you constantly, and last week she told me that she didn't understand why we were keeping her away from the grandma who loves her. She said you were the only grown-up who never made her feel like love was something she had to earn. 8-year-old wisdom delivered through the mouth of my granddaughter. "Rebecca, I'm glad you called. I've missed you. I've missed all of you. But I need you to understand something. I'm not coming back to the way things were. I'm not coming back to New York, I'm not giving up control of my money, and I'm not going back to being the family caretaker who never gets taken care of. I know that now. I know we can't go back. But maybe we can go forward? Maybe we can figure out how to be a family that respects each other instead of just using each other." It was a start. Not forgiveness yet, not trust yet, but acknowledgement and possibility. "I'd like that," I said. "I'd like that very much. Mom? Could we come visit you? Could we see your house and meet Clara and could we start over?" Starting over. The idea was terrifying and thrilling at the same time. "Yes," I said. "But there will be rules. You'll stay in a hotel, not in my house. You'll treat Clara with respect, she's not a guest here, she's my family now too. And if you start treating me like an incompetent child again, the visit is over." "Fair enough," Rebecca said quickly. "More than fair." We scheduled their visit for Memorial Day weekend, a family holiday that would give us a chance to see if we could create new traditions instead of just carrying on the painful patterns of the old ones. After I hung up, I sat in my garden for a long time, thinking about second chances and boundaries and the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. I had learned that I could forgive my children for the years of emotional abuse without necessarily trusting them not to do it again. I could love them while still protecting myself from them. The visit, when it came, was awkward at first. Rebecca and Michael seemed genuinely shocked by my house, by my obvious happiness, by how different I looked and sounded from the diminished woman they had left behind in Queens. "Mom, this place is incredible," Michael said, standing on my porch and looking out over the garden. "You did all this yourself?" "Clara and I did it together. And we had help from several very nice landscapers and contractors. Turns out you can hire people to help you without giving them control over your entire life." It was a gentle dig, but it landed. Michael had the grace to look embarrassed. Maya was enchanted by everything: the pool, the orange trees, the cat that had adopted us shortly after we arrived. She spent the weekend exploring every corner of the property, and for the first time in months I watched her behave like a child instead of like someone carefully monitoring the adults around her for signs of conflict. "Grandma Eleanor, I love your house. It feels happy here." "It is happy here, sweetheart. Clara and I are happy here. Can I come visit you again?" "Anytime your parents say yes, you are welcome here." Rebecca, who had been quiet for most of the weekend, spoke up. "Maya, what if we visited Grandma Eleanor every Christmas? Would you like that? Every Christmas? Really? Really? If Grandma Eleanor will have us." I looked at my daughter, really looked at her for the first time in years. She looked tired, older, like someone who had realized that getting everything you think you want doesn't necessarily make you happy. "You're always welcome here," I said. "All of you. As long as you remember that this is my house, my life, and my choice." That evening, after Rebecca, Michael, and Maya had gone back to their hotel, Clara and I sat on the porch with our wine and watched the sunset. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Hopeful," I said. "But careful. I think they've learned something, but I don't know if they've learned enough. And I don't know if the lesson will stick when they get back to their regular lives. What matters is what you've learned." She was right. I had learned that I could survive without their approval. I had learned that love doesn't require martyrdom. I had learned that setting boundaries isn't cruel, it's necessary for any relationship that's going to be healthy in the long term. Most importantly, I had learned that happiness isn't selfish. Taking care of myself hadn't made me less capable of loving others, it had made me more capable of loving them well. 6 months later, Rebecca called to tell me that she and her husband were getting divorced. Instead of asking me for money to hire a lawyer, she asked if Maya could spend the summer with me while she sorted out her living situation. "I know it's a lot to ask," she said, "and I know I don't have the right to ask you for any favors after everything that happened. But Maya loves you and she needs stability right now, and honestly, you're the most stable person in our family." It was the first time in years that Rebecca had asked me for something that would benefit me as much as it would benefit her. Having Maya for the summer would be a joy, not a burden. "Of course," I said. "Clara and I would love to have her." Maya arrived in June with 2 suitcases and a determination to learn everything about Florida. Clara and I taught her to swim properly, showed her how to pick fruit off the trees, let her help us plant a vegetable garden, and took her on adventures around our new state. But more than that, we showed her what healthy relationships looked like. We showed her that adults could disagree without screaming, that love wasn't conditional on perfect behavior, that taking care of yourself wasn't the same thing as being selfish. One evening, as we were sitting by the pool watching Maya practice her diving, she climbed out of the water and sat beside me. "Grandma Eleanor, why did you move away from Mommy and Uncle Michael?" It was the question I had been waiting for, the one I needed to answer carefully and honestly. "Maya, sometimes people we love forget how to treat us with kindness and respect. When that happens, we have 2 choices: we can keep accepting unkind treatment and hope they change, or we can remove ourselves from the situation and create our own happiness." I tried the first choice for a long time. It didn't work. So I tried the second choice. Did it work? I looked around at my beautiful garden, my peaceful house, my dear friend Clara reading a book in the shade, and my granddaughter dripping pool water and asking thoughtful questions. "Yes, sweetheart. It worked. Are you glad you moved away?" "I'm glad I learned that I was strong enough to choose my own happiness. And I'm glad that choosing my happiness made it possible for our family to start treating each other better." "Do you think Mommy learned how to be kinder?" "I think she's learning. It takes time to change old habits, but I think she's trying." Maya nodded solemnly. "I'm going to practice being kind all the time, so I don't have to learn later when it's harder." 8-year-old wisdom that had taken me 75 years to discover. At the end of summer, when Rebecca came to pick up Maya, she looked different again, more peaceful, less frantic. The divorce had been finalized, she had found a smaller house that she could afford on her own, and she had started therapy to understand why her relationship with her ex-husband had been so toxic. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about what you said last Christmas, about the difference between loving someone and respecting them. I think I'm finally starting to understand." We were sitting in my living room, watching Maya and Clara work on a jigsaw puzzle. The scene was domestic and comfortable in a way that visits with my children had never been before. I spent so many years thinking that love meant never having to change, that if you really loved me you would accept any behavior from me. But that's not love, that's enabling. Real love sometimes means having boundaries. Real love sometimes means saying no. "It took me 75 years to learn that lesson," I said. "You're ahead of schedule." "I've also been thinking about the money. The lottery money. I need to tell you something." I felt my shoulders tense involuntarily. Money conversations with my children had never ended well. When you won that money, my first thought wasn't, "I'm so happy for Mom." It was, "Finally, our financial problems are over." I didn't see it as your good fortune, I saw it as the family salvation. And I convinced myself that was normal, that family money was automatically shared money. "Rebecca, let me finish. I need to say this. Mom, you worked hard your whole life. You raised us and took care of Dad and then took care of yourself when he died. That lottery money was your reward for all of that. It was never ours. And the fact that you've used it to create this beautiful life for yourself, and the fact that you've been generous with it without being obligated by it, that's exactly what money should do. It should give you choices, not just new problems." It was the most mature thing I had ever heard Rebecca say about money or family or responsibility. "Thank you," I said. "That means more to me than you know." "Mom, I have one more thing to ask you, and I need you to know that it's really a request, not a demand, and it's okay if you say no." I braced myself. "Would you consider setting up college funds for Maya and any other grandchildren who might come along? Not because you owe it to us, but because you want to give them the same kind of choices and opportunities that your lottery money gave you." It was a request I could say yes to because it came without manipulation or guilt. It was a gift I could give freely because it wasn't being extracted from me. "I would love to do that," I said. "Maya's education is already taken care of, and if you or Michael have more children, their education will be taken care of too. But it's a gift from me to them, not a family obligation or an expected inheritance. It's something I want to do because I can, not because I have to." "That's perfect. That's exactly what it should be. As they were leaving, Maya hugged me tight and whispered in my ear, "Grandma Eleanor, I love you for real. Not because you bought me things or because you're supposed to love family. I love you because you're kind and you make me feel special. For real." That was the difference between love and obligation, between relationship and transaction. Maya loved me for real, and I loved her for real, and that was worth more than any amount of money. After they left, Clara and I sat on the porch with our evening wine and watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. "Penny for your thoughts," Clara said. "I was thinking about transformation. About how I thought winning the lottery was going to transform my life, but really it just gave me the courage to transform myself. Do you ever regret it? Any of it?" "No. Even the hard parts, even the months of silence from my kids, even the loneliness and uncertainty, no, I don't regret it. How could I regret something that led me to this?" I gestured around us, at the garden we had created, the house that had become our sanctuary, the friend who had become my chosen family, the relationship with my granddaughter that was built on mutual affection instead of mutual obligation. "Clara, when Harold died, I thought my life was essentially over. I thought I had nothing left but to be useful to my children until I died. I thought happiness was something that happened to other people, younger people, people who had made different choices than I had. And now? Now I know that happiness is something you choose, not something that happens to you. I know that it's never too late to start over. I know that love multiplies when you give it freely and withers when you extract it through guilt. And I know that the people who really love you want you to be happy, even if your happiness doesn't fit their plans for you." We sat in comfortable silence as the sun disappeared behind the palm trees and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. "Eleanor, can I tell you something?" "Of course. This year with you has been the best year of my life since my husband died. Maybe the best year of my entire life. Thank you for having the courage to invite me into your adventure. Thank you for saying yes." The seasons turned in Florida as they do everywhere, but more gently, without the harsh edges of northern winters. My second Christmas in Sarasota was everything I had dreamed of. Rebecca, Michael, and Maya came for a week, staying in a hotel but spending their days at my house, helping with cooking and decorating and creating new traditions that didn't carry the weight of old resentments. Michael, who had been slower than Rebecca to acknowledge his role in our family's dysfunction, finally found the courage to have an honest conversation with me one evening after Maya had gone to bed. "Mom, I need to apologize to you. Not just for the legal stuff, although that was wrong. I need to apologize for all of it, for treating you like a bank instead of a person, for ignoring you unless I needed something, for making you feel like your only value was in what you could provide for us. Michael, you were young and struggling and, no, Mom. I was selfish. I was 35 years old, not 15. I knew better, and I chose to act like I didn't because it was easier to take your help than to figure out my own problems. And when you won the lottery, instead of being happy for you, I immediately started thinking about how it would benefit me. That's not love, that's exploitation." The word hung in the air between us. Exploitation. It was harsh but accurate. "I've been in therapy too," he continued. "Learning about family systems and boundaries and how to have relationships that aren't based on what people can do for you. It's been eye-opening and embarrassing and necessary." "I'm proud of you for doing that work," I said. "I want us to have a real relationship, Mom. Not one where I call you when I need something and ignore you when I don't. I want to be your son, not your dependent. I'd like that very much. And I want Maya to see what healthy family relationships look like. I want her to grow up knowing that love isn't conditional, that family members can disagree without cutting each other off, that it's possible to be independent and connected at the same time." It was a conversation I had waited 40 years to have with my son. On New Year's Eve, Clara and I hosted a small party, Rebecca, Michael, Maya, and a few of our new friends from Sarasota. We cooked together, played games, told stories, and at midnight we stood on the porch and watched fireworks over the bay. As the last firework faded from the sky, Maya snuggled up next to me. "Grandma Eleanor, what's your New Year's resolution?" I thought about it for a moment. What did I want from the coming year that I didn't already have? "I think my resolution is to keep being brave," I said. "To keep choosing happiness even when it's scary, and to keep believing that I deserve good things even when other people disagree." "That's a good resolution," Maya said solemnly. "Can I have the same one?" "Of course, sweetheart. Everyone should have the same resolution." Later that night, after everyone had gone home and Clara had gone to bed, I sat alone on my porch and thought about the year that was ending and the year that was beginning. 2 years earlier, I had been a lonely, invisible woman living in a cramped apartment in Queens, measuring my worth by how useful I could be to people who barely noticed I existed. I had been disappearing a little more each day, shrinking into the role of family martyr and accepting it as my fate. Now I was a woman who owned a beautiful house in Florida, who had dear friends and meaningful relationships, who could afford to be generous without sacrificing her own needs, who could say no without feeling guilty and yes without feeling resentful. The transformation hadn't happened overnight, and it hadn't been painless. There had been months of doubt, times when I wondered if I had made a terrible mistake, moments when the silence from my children felt like punishment for choosing myself over them. But I had persevered, and the perseverance had paid off in ways I never could have imagined. My phone buzzed with a text message. I expected it to be one of the party guests thanking me for the evening, but instead it was from a number I didn't recognize. Mrs. Patterson, this is Margaret Chen, your attorney. I wanted to wish you a happy new year and to tell you how proud I am of the life you've built for yourself. You're an inspiration to every client I represent who thinks it's too late to start over. Even my lawyer was proud of me. The thought made me smile. I typed back, thank you, Margaret. You gave me the tools to fight for myself when I had forgotten I was worth fighting for. As I put my phone away, I realized that I had learned something important about gratitude over the past 2 years. I had always thought gratitude meant being thankful for what you had, even if it wasn't enough. But real gratitude, I had discovered, meant being thankful enough for what you deserved to actually fight for it. I was grateful for my lottery win, but not just because of the money. I was grateful because it had given me the courage to demand the life I wanted instead of settling for the life other people thought I should have. I was grateful for my children, but not just because they were family. I was grateful for the hard lessons they had taught me about the difference between love and manipulation, between generosity and enabling, between being needed and being valued. I was grateful for Clara, for my house, for my garden, for my independence, for my ability to say no without explanation and yes without obligation. Most of all, I was grateful for the woman I had become, someone who could raise a glass of champagne in celebration without waiting for anyone else's permission to be happy. Spring brought new growth to my garden and new possibilities to my life. I started volunteering at a local literacy center, teaching older adults to read. Many of them were women my age who had spent their lives taking care of everyone but themselves and had never had the opportunity for education. Working with them reminded me how lucky I was to have had choices, even when I had been too afraid to make them. It also reminded me that it's never too late to learn new things, to grow, to change direction. One afternoon, while I was helping a 70-year-old woman named Rosa sound out words in a beginner's reading book, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. Mrs. Eleanor, you think I can really learn to read? At my age? Rosa, I learned to stand up for myself at 75. You can absolutely learn to read at 70. But what if my children think I'm foolish? They already worry about me living alone. The people who love you want you to grow and learn and become more yourself, not less. And the people who want you to stay small and dependent don't have your best interests at heart, no matter what they tell you. It was advice I could give confidently because I had lived it, tested it, proven it to be true. That summer, Maya came to stay with me again. At 9 years old, she was more thoughtful and observant than ever, asking questions about everything from why some flowers bloom at night to why grown-ups sometimes make things more complicated than they need to be. One evening, as we were floating in the pool and watching the stars come out, she asked me a question that caught me off guard. Grandma Eleanor, do you think you would have been friends with me if we weren't related? What do you mean, sweetheart? Like, if we just met somewhere, would you like me for who I am, or just because you're supposed to love me because I'm your granddaughter? It was such a mature question, and such an important one. Maya, I think you're one of the most interesting, thoughtful, funny people I've ever met. If we weren't related and we met at the library or the park, I would definitely want to be your friend. Really? Really? You ask good questions, you're curious about everything, you're kind to animals and old people, and you make me laugh. Those are the qualities I look for in friends. I'm glad we're related and friends. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. As summer ended and I prepared to say goodbye to Maya again, I realized that my relationship with her had become the template for what family relationships could be, built on mutual affection and respect rather than obligation and guilt, sustained by genuine enjoyment of each other's company rather than duty and tradition. Rebecca came to pick up Maya looking happier and healthier than I had seen her in years. The divorce had been finalized, she had started dating someone new who treated her well, and she had learned to manage her finances without depending on anyone else for bailouts. Mom, I have something to tell you, and I hope you'll be excited about it. I'm listening. I've been accepted to graduate school. I'm going to get my master's in social work. I want to work with families, help them communicate better, set healthy boundaries. I guess you could say I've become passionate about family systems. It was the most ironic and wonderful career choice she could have made. Rebecca, that's fantastic. I'm so proud of you. It's a 2-year program, and I'll be working part-time, so money will be tight. But I've applied for scholarships and student loans, and I figured out how to make it work without asking anyone for help. Without asking anyone for help. The independence in her voice was unmistakable. And if you need help, I said carefully, you know you can ask me. But ask, not demand or manipulate or guilt trip. Just ask, and accept that no is a possible answer. I know. And honestly, Mom, knowing that I can take care of myself makes me less likely to need help from anyone. It's funny how that works. It wasn't funny, it was the foundation of healthy relationships. When you know you can survive on your own, you can choose to be with other people out of love rather than need. Autumn in Florida was my favorite season, still warm enough to spend time outdoors, but with a softness to the air that made everything feel more gentle. Clara and I had settled into our third year together, and our friendship had deepened into something that felt like the family I had always wanted but never known how to create. We had our own bedrooms, our own routines, our own friends, but we also had daily rituals that anchored us to each other: morning coffee on the porch, evening wine by the pool, weekend projects in the garden, Tuesday night movies and Thursday afternoon book club meetings. It was a relationship built on choice rather than obligation, and it was the most sustainable and satisfying relationship I had ever had with anyone. One November evening, as we were decorating the house for Thanksgiving, Clara asked me a question that made me stop and think. Eleanor, do you ever wonder what your life would have been like if you hadn't won the lottery? I considered it seriously. I don't think the lottery changed who I was. I think it gave me the resources to become who I always could have been. Maybe it would have taken me longer without the money, maybe I would have had to make smaller changes more gradually, but I think I still would have ended up here eventually. Here meaning Florida? Here meaning happy. Here meaning surrounded by people who see me as a person instead of a function. Here meaning free to make choices based on what I want instead of what other people need from me. Do you think you would have found the courage to change without the financial security? It was a hard question. Would I have been brave enough to set boundaries with my children if I had still needed their approval and attention to feel worthy? Would I have been strong enough to choose my own happiness if I hadn't had the safety net of financial independence? I don't know, I said honestly. I hope so. But the money definitely made it easier to take risks, to make changes, to say no to people who were used to me saying yes. Do you feel guilty about that? About having advantages that other people in similar situations don't have? I feel grateful, I said after thinking about it. And I feel responsible. Grateful for the advantages, and responsible for using them well. That's why I volunteer at the Literacy Center, why I donate to the Senior Center, why I try to help other people who are struggling with family boundary issues. The lottery money gave me freedom, and I want to use that freedom to help other people find their own. Thanksgiving that year was perfect in a way that family holidays never had been before. Rebecca, Michael, and Maya came for the weekend, along with Clara's nephew from Tampa and a couple of our friends from Sarasota who didn't have family nearby. The conversation around the dinner table was easy and genuine, full of laughter and stories and plans for the future. No one asked me for money. No one treated me like a burden or an ATM. No one made me feel like I had to earn my place at my own table. After dinner, while the adults were cleaning up and Maya was playing with the neighbor's cat, Michael found a moment to talk with me privately. Mom, I need to tell you something. This is the first Thanksgiving in my adult life where I felt genuinely grateful instead of just obligated. Being here, seeing how happy you are, watching how you and Clara take care of each other, it's shown me what healthy relationships look like. That makes me happy, Michael. I've been thinking about Dad a lot this weekend. About how you took care of him when he was sick, how you managed everything after he died, how you never complained or asked for help even when you were struggling. I don't think he would have wanted you to spend the rest of your life just being useful to other people. It was true. Harold had always encouraged me to have my own interests, my own friends, my own dreams. He would have been proud of me for finally claiming the life I wanted. I think Dad would have loved this house, I said. He would have loved the garden and the porch and the way the light comes through the windows in the morning. And he would have loved seeing you this happy. I think so too. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on my porch and thought about gratitude, not the forced gratitude I had practiced for years, being thankful for scraps and grateful for mistreatment, but real gratitude for a life that finally felt authentic and joyful. I was grateful for second chances and third chances and the possibility of transformation at any age. I was grateful for learning the difference between being loving and being a pushover, between being generous and being an enabler, between being family-oriented and being family-controlled. Most of all, I was grateful for the courage to raise that glass of champagne 2 years ago, even when it led to conflict and uncertainty and the temporary loss of relationships I had thought I couldn't live without. I had learned that I could live without almost anything except my own self-respect, and that with self-respect intact, I could rebuild everything else. As I sat there in the warm Florida evening, listening to the fountain in my garden and feeling grateful for every choice that had led me to this moment, I raised an imaginary glass to the woman I had been and the woman I had become. To Eleanor Patterson, who had finally learned that happiness isn't selfish, love isn't transactional, and it's never too late to start over. To the 75-year-old woman who had won $45 million and used it to buy herself a life worth living. To the grandmother who had taught her granddaughter that real love doesn't come with conditions, and to the mother who had learned that setting boundaries doesn't mean building walls. To the friend who had discovered that the best relationships are chosen rather than assigned, and to the individual who had remembered that she was a complete person, not just someone else's missing piece. I raised my imaginary glass to all of it, the pain and the healing, the loss and the discovery, the fear and the courage, the ending and the beginning. And this time, when I lifted that glass, there was no one to tell me not to drink. I celebrated my own life, my own choices, my own happiness, and it tasted sweeter than any champagne I had ever imagined. The story of my lottery win wasn't really about money at all. It was about permission to want more for myself, permission to say no to people who took advantage of my love, permission to believe that I deserved happiness and respect and genuine relationships. It was about learning that love multiplies when you give it freely and withers when you extract it through guilt and manipulation. It was about discovering that the people who really love you want you to be happy, even if your happiness doesn't fit their plans for you. It was about understanding that family isn't just about blood relations, it's about the people who see you, value you, and choose to keep showing up in your life with kindness and respect. Most of all, it was about remembering that it's never too late to start over, never too late to choose yourself, never too late to raise a glass and celebrate the miracle of your own existence. Have you ever lived, or known someone who lived, something like this? Have you ever felt invisible in your own family, useful but not valued, needed but not loved? Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to choose your own happiness over other people's comfort? If so, please share your story in the comments. And if my story touched you, please like and subscribe, it means more than you know, and helps me keep opening my heart to strangers who might need to hear that transformation is possible at any age, that courage can bloom even in the most unlikely soil, and that sometimes the best thing you can do for your family is to show them what happiness looks like.